Since the onset of Russia's full-scale invasion, Estonia, a small country of just 1.3 million people, has shown incredible leadership in responding to Moscow's aggression and supporting Ukraine. From providing the largest aid by GDP share and initiating an ammunition coalition to backing Ukraine's NATO and EU membership bids, Estonia has been one of the most reliable allies of Kyiv. Throughout all this time, the government of Estonia has been led by Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. Today, we have an exclusive opportunity to speak with Prime Minister just after she met with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Estonia. If you want to see more interviews like this, please subscribe to our channel, like and comment on this video, and help it reach a wider audience. So we're talking just a day after President Volodymyr Zelensky visit to Estonia as part of his bigger Baltics tour. And I'm wondering, what was his main message to you?
Well, first of all, the message was to say thank you to the Estonian people, as we have been great supporters of Ukraine, not only militarily, politically, but also in terms of accepting refugees and in humanitarian aid. So we are a small country with a big heart. That is the first thing. The second thing was also to say out that there is the will to defend Ukraine, but it's also we need the belief in victory, so that we need to help Ukraine to really win the war, which is important. Again, maybe not so much to say here, we all agree, but to the wider public, that not only that we say that until Ukraine wins, but we really have to believe that Ukraine is able to win, and that depends on the aid, military aid, the support, political support that we are giving to Ukraine.
You mentioned Ukrainian refugees, and Estonia has welcomed around 36,000 Ukrainian refugees so far. But there has been this new angle to discussing Ukrainian refugees recently, which is, of course, mobilization. Have you and President Zelensky discussed the idea of mobilizing Ukrainians in Estonia, and do you personally support that?
Yes, we discussed the issue of Ukrainian refugees, and especially the men who are in the mobilization age. So the question is that, of course, President Zelensky was describing that there are people who are in the battlefield, and then there are people who are, paying taxes to Ukraine so that you can fund the soldiers who are in the battlefield. But then there are also people who are in foreign countries like Estonia. Now, for us, they have the right to be here if they go under those rules. If they have reached us, then European Union gives them the temporary protection. So we will definitely, not do anything on our side to give those people out. It is up to Ukraine to really, turn to the people who are here and request them to come back to help their motherland.
Another big topic of discussion at the moment is, of course, the European Union's aid to Ukraine. Do you think the EU will accept Hungary's request to revise aid on an annual basis to be able to unblock this 15 billion package?
We have to reach a conclusion and solution and decide in 1st of February regarding this aid. What I can assure you is that 26 countries are firmly behind giving this 50 billion to Ukraine. Now, the question is how we can make it so that 27 are behind this decision. And I think that I'm still optimistic that we reach this solution. There are different options so that everybody is on board, because I think it's not only that we sent this 50 billion to Ukraine that we will do one way or the other, but it's also what kind of message we send to Kremlin. We are united is one message, and that has been very strong message, and that has been a negative surprise to Putin and Kremlin that we have been so united. So I think that is our strength, and we have to keep that.
What gives you that optimism? What are those options that EU still has in its hands?
Well, we have the different instruments. One is the MFF, how we can approach this with 27 members, but there's also the option how we can approach this with 26 members. So maybe not going into the details really, because we are working on the solution, but it's important that we reach a conclusion and decision in 1st of February, because then we can also show to our other partners across the Atlantic that we have done our decision, and hopefully they will do their same, because again, we have to help Ukraine to be able to defend themselves.
And going back to that place where these funds are used and needed the most, to the battlefield, some believe that Ukraine now kind of needs to recalibrate its strategy and rely more heavily on attacks on occupied Crimea in Russia's Black Sea Fleet to increase this pressure on Russia. And for that, of course, Ukraine needs reinforcements when it comes to long-range capabilities. Namely, we're talking about Taurus from Germany and, of course, ATACMS from the US. Do you think they should provide this long-range capabilities to Ukraine?
Well, in terms of military strategy, I would leave it to the military experts, what works and what doesn't. What I can say from the political point of view is that we should help Ukraine with all the means and equipment that we have, because this is the way that Ukraine can really push back the aggressor. And on our side, we have made a decision to help Ukraine with at least 0.25% of our GDP the coming 4 years. And we have made a plea to other European countries and allies to do the same, because if you think about the combined defense budgets of the Ramstein coalition, then they are much bigger than that of Russia's heavily inflated one. And if you just make a simple calculation, how much money Russia spends on war monthly, it's like roughly 5.3 billion euros monthly. But if you take the combined budgets and the 0.25% of GDP of all those Ramstein coalition countries, then it would be 120 billion. That would definitely, turn the tide in the favor of Ukraine. But then, of course, the other question is the specific military equipment. And there I say that whatever you have that could help Ukraine win, you should give. I mean, whoever has it, but it's up to those countries to decide eventually.
Many see the decision of providing long-range missiles as a political one, and think that there is just no political will to do that from Washington and Berlin. Would you agree with that?
Of course, it's a political decision. So I agree with that, and I try to argue that if you only have regarding the long-range weapons, if you only have the upside that Ukraine doesn't have the long-range weapons, then the aggressor only has the upside to attack Ukraine and take more territories, because they know that Ukraine can't reach them. So in order to make a difference, you have to have the long-range weapons, so that, there is a calculation also on the Russia side that, okay, they might also hurt us, which means that maybe we will not take this attack up. If there's only upside, if they can only win, of course, they don't count their own people that they lose on the way, then they will just continue. So this is my understanding.
And to that point, Russia also knows that the West is largely against Ukraine using Western weapons on the Russian territory. Do you think that also should change and Ukraine should be allowed to strike military targets on the Russian soil with Western weapons?
Well, President Zelensky actually described this once in the European Council very, very well regarding Kherson at that time. That what does it mean that they will bomb the city and you can't bomb them back because you don't have the long range weapons. So this is how it is. It is what he said yesterday in Estonia is he said that he has the feeling that some of the Western countries have a fear of Russia losing, and this maybe again comes from history, thinking that what comes after Russia is humiliated. But I've stressed so many times that let's not worry about Russia's face, so Russia's humiliation. Let's worry about really ending this war because this is what is at stake here. And we can worry about what comes after later on. But the problem right now, the war, is on Ukrainian soil. One country has attacked another country. There's clearly one aggressor and one victim. There is no gray areas in this.
Are there any EU officials advocating for peace talks and ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia at the moment? And do you support that?
I don't see that. I see that the political leaders of European Union and NATO have put their political will behind supporting Ukraine, and it's very hard for them to back from that support. Of course, we have elections, and that might change, in those countries. But so far, I haven't seen that. I think there's a difference between 2014 and 2024. I mean, in 2014, I was a member of European Parliament, and I saw how quickly it went from, let's support Ukraine to, okay, let's, sit down and negotiate and give away a territory so that Russia is happy and is not moving, further away. This time we have been able to explain how really giving in to the aggressor only gives you more war, which has happened. So this is, I think, the understanding of the leaders around the table is that weakness provokes Russia or the aggressor. Strength doesn't. So we have to be really strong there. And peace is just the pause for Russia to get their act together, to continue. Therefore, we need, of course, peace, but we need a sustainable peace. And sustainable peace has many elements. One of those elements is accountability for the crimes and damages committed.
Do you think Ukraine can win this war by military means?
I believe that Ukraine can win this war because Ukrainian will to win this war is very strong. You are defending your home, and I totally understand where you are. But Ukraine can win this war when the West helps Ukraine with the military equipment and the military support. That we also really have to understand that it's also on our shoulders. Like the historian Timothy Garton-Ash has said that, Winston Churchill talked about the blood, toil and tears, sweat and tears. This time it's only Ukrainian blood, sweat and tears. But the rest of us need to have a very clear mind, strong standpoint, and also some reallocation of resources so that Ukrainians can win.
If Donald Trump wins the US presidential election, do you think the EU would be able to supply sufficient aid to Ukraine in case there's a decrease in the US support?
Europe has done its share and has supported Ukraine more than US has. But of course, United States has supported Ukraine a lot, and this is very important that they continue to do so. If you talk to the Republicans and Democrats in U.S. Congress, I have had meetings with many of them. There is strong support for helping Ukraine, but of course they have elections coming, and presidential candidate Donald Trump has been quite vocal about what he thinks about the Ukrainian war. Definitely elections are a turbulent time, but I believe, and I'm optimist, is that there is a strong political will across the aisle in the parties, both Democrats and Republicans, to continue to support Ukraine. And one of the things, I was just in US, and one of the things that I said to them is that America, United States of America, considers themselves as the best country in the world, the number one country in the world. If United States has supported Ukraine and now backs from it, then it means that Russia wins, and then it means that United States of America becomes the second country in the world, and I don't think it's in the interest of them.
Our allies raised the alarm quite a lot that it's not only Ukraine's safety that is at stake, and that any moment Europe could come under Russian attack as well. If Donald Trump again becomes the president of the United States, does Estonia feel safe as a NATO member in case there's aggression against it by Russia?
I totally agree with you that it's not only Ukraine that is at stake, but it's wider global peace that it's at stake. I recently watched a documentary series about the World War II, and you can learn from history very well. I mean, in the Second World War, you had a similar situation where the aggressors all across the world are carefully taking notes how there is the reaction to one aggression. If aggression pays off, then it serves as an invitation to use aggression elsewhere. And this will certainly happen. I mean, we have several countries that we know of that have aspirations towards their neighboring countries. I mean, take North Korea or some other players. So I think this has much wider consequences, not only in European security architecture, but also globally. How are we able to stop this aggression here, push it back? Or to give in to aggressor, and then we will see this more in the world.
I want to follow up. Does Estonia feel safe as part of NATO if Donald Trump becomes president, and if there is a risk of aggression specifically towards Estonia?
We sometimes, I think, as the West, buys into the narratives that Russia is also trying to develop. And one of those narratives is that the West is weak, NATO is weak, but actually we shouldn't underestimate our own power. Russia is definitely afraid of having a conflict with NATO, and as we are in NATO, we don't have the war here. So I don't think that this is a real threat. But as I said, it is clear that European countries have to boost their own defense expenditure. I mean, there is Article 5 in NATO that we all know, but there's also Article 3, which means that every country has to do their utmost to, increase their own defense. And collective defense is not only United States, but it's also Great Britain, it's also France, it's also Germany. Great Britain and France, two nuclear countries as well. They are present here. We have the new NATO plans ready. We have the pre-positioned equipment. We also have to show Kremlin that we are ready. We are ready to defend ourselves, and he will not have success here, and that would hopefully make them calculate otherwise.
So you don't actually think that Russia could possibly dare to invade, attack Estonia or any other NATO territory?
Well, right now they are not taking up a conflict with NATO, but it's very important how we are reacting in the Ukraine war. If this aggression pays off, we have seen in the history. If you think back, Crimea. They annexed Crimea. It was the little green men. They were embarrassed that it's Russian soldiers. They tried to hide it because they were afraid of the Western reaction, because the Western reaction was weak at the time. They made a mental note that, okay, we can do this because nothing happens. So if they can also, attack Ukraine, get away with no punishment, no accountability for this, then the next step might be NATO, because they can, and they can and may calculate that NATO is weak enough. But that's why it's very important that we stay united behind Ukraine. We help Ukraine militarily so that Ukraine is able to win this war and push Russia back to its borders.
Estonia has been a very reliable ally of Ukraine in many aspects, and one of them was also the ammunition production coalition. Right now, the question is whether the EU could actually live up to the expectations that it set for itself. Do you think that the EU will be able to provide 1 million shells to Ukraine by March, as initially pledged?
Yes, this was Estonian initiative, and I'm actually very happy that this initiative was taken up. But of course, it's the question of implementation. So we have done our share as Estonia of this 1 million rounds, and we really expect other European countries who have promised to be part of it to do the same. And then we will get this 1 million rounds together by March. I think it's very important if you have given the promises as countries that you keep those promises.
Yersinze wrote in an opinion piece that Moscow believes it can outlast Ukraine and the West, outproduce. Do you believe that the West and Ukraine can outlast Moscow?
Yes, I believe so, because if you take, several elements. One is the combined defense budgets of the Ramstein coalition that are supporting Ukraine are 13 times bigger than that of Russia's heavily inflated one. If you take the economic power of European countries, then even only European countries are their economic power is 7 times bigger than that of Russia's one. If you think about, there's a lot of talk about war fatigue in the West, but there is not much talk about the war fatigue in Russia. Of course, it's not a democracy, it's not a free country, so we don't see it in the way that we have in our free media. But what we know from our intelligence is that there's war fatigue in Russia because their young people are coming back in coffins. So there's also a big problem with financing the war machine because the budget is in a big deficit and they can't loan or lend money from outside because of the sanctions. And China is not lending them any money. So they are in a place where they have to probably raise taxes in order to finance that war machine. If you think about the Prigozhin mutiny, then of course Prigozhin was eliminated, but what he said was that army is not happy with the equipment, is not happy with the training, is not happy with the plans. So has that all changed? I don't think so, although we don't hear about this. So I think we can outlast Russia in terms of economy, in terms of military support, but also in terms of the political situation.
But do you think that the EU needs to change, the EU and ultimately the West, to shift its strategy somewhat? Because at the same time, Russia's economy has proved more resilient than many expected, and the initial idea to suffocate Russia's war machine and isolate Russia completely has had limited success, less than what the world expected from sanctions. Do you think there's a need for change?
Well, again, I wouldn't buy into that narrative that it's not working, because we know that the sanctions are hurting Russia. Of course, the issue is the circumvention of sanctions that we have to work with. I mean, we see a rise of trade with Kyrgyzstan. It's clear that it's not going to Kyrgyzstan, but it's rather going to Russia in this vast amounts. We have to deal with that, and we will deal with that. One thing that really worries me is the political isolation. If we see, Russia coming back to the tables around different political organizations, that is something that we have to completely, isolate them as long as they are waging a war against their neighbor. But it hasn't been so far so strong. So we definitely have room to do more, and we should do more. We should also, think outside of the box. What we see is that some things that are not the big sanctions, but also some smaller things affect Russia really. I bring you a few examples. One example was that when we decided that we will not let the Russians enter our border anymore, that had a huge effect because the people of Moscow and St. Petersburg couldn't travel to Europe anymore. And when I talk about this, the other example is the use of frozen assets. The assets have been frozen right now, but the Russians, the oligarchs, are thinking that they will get them back eventually. If we start to really, use them to the benefit of Ukraine, then it is getting to those oligarchs that they are really losing this because of this war. And I also think that this has an effect because we see that already the discussions around this have an effect. So what I'm advocating is let's, think outside of the box. If we have somehow used the box of sanctions completely, we have other tools. We have to be creative and thinking how we can end this war. And one thing that really bothers me with the circumvention of sanctions is that very often, countries or companies are saying that, this hurts me and others would do it anyway. And that's why I'm finding ways to, go around. But then I asked that, everybody wants this war to stop. Of course, it has an effect on European economy as well. But the way to stop it is to concentrate the strength that we have and not to circumvent it. Try to, profit from this, but concentrate our strength and pain in a short term in order to gain, from the victory of Ukraine in the long term.
Regarding frozen Russian assets, a committee in the Estonian parliament has just initiated in November this process of actually transferring these assets as aid to Ukraine. Do you think it will be widely supported by the parliament and the president? Do you think there's any realistic timeline of when Ukraine could actually get those funds?
Yes, we in Estonia initiated the law already last year. So how it works is that we recognize the legitimate claim that Russia has towards us regarding the assets, because we have frozen them. They are with us and they have a value. But there's also the registry of the war damages that is there in Hague about the damages that Russia is causing to Ukraine every day, and they have a cost as well. So we make a settlement of those two claims, so that, if the war or when the war stops, then of course, if we have used all those assets and there's something left over, then we can give them back to Russia. But I don't think so. I know that there are estimates that the frozen assets cover 80% of the recovery of Ukraine. So there is a lot of interest from other countries regarding our laws, and we have been distributing this as well. We hope that it goes smoothly in the parliament, and also the president is declaring the law. The argument against this is that we are violating the property rights, but property rights are not absolute. And actually, the property rights have been violated by freezing the assets already, and not to, recognizing that we have a claim in that value, that Russia has a claim towards us, but also there's a legitimate claim of Ukraine towards Russia. So I think we have tried to make it as bulletproof as possible. Can I, as a lawyer, say that it is totally bulletproof? Well, I can't, but it's better than nothing. And I think it is getting to also politicians in other countries that our taxpayers shouldn't pay for the damages caused by Russia.
I have just one last question. How do you think we keep up support for Ukraine for years to come?
Ukrainian or the countries that support Ukraine are all democracies, which means that, of course, we have domestic problems and issues coming up, and we have to concentrate really our focus on ending this war. How we do it, keeping this resolve is important. And of course, in democracies, we argue, we debate, we try to find the ways to do it, but we have to do it. So it is day by day and week by week. So I hope that by giving these decisions that I've advocated also the other allies to do, like Estonia did, to say that we commit 0.25% of our GDP next 4 years to support Ukraine militarily. So if everybody else would do it as well in the Ramstein coalition, that would mean that there would be 120 billion euros for Ukraine, and that would actually definitely outlast Russia. That would actually break, I think, be an important tipping point for this war to end.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.